So the first one is you move with all your diddles going outside. The next variation, after you play through this entire exercise, is you do inside with the same drums. Then you can do outside sweeps, but doing it with the interior drums. So 2, 1, 1, 2. And then the opposite of that, so doing inside sweeps. So 1, 2, 2, 1. And if you want to do a fifth variation, just to make it so you can go like outside, inside, is you can just like improvise something on your fifth variation, and you can loop this stuff from 20 all the way up to 160 beats per minute just by clicking on the timestamps in the description. And if this is not enough to keep you busy, there are several more diddle exercises on my website. In fact, there are several hundred exercises on here and almost 1,300 hours of free drumming play-alongs and content. 3 ways to work on like flam accents. So the first one that I demonstrated was using the grid variations, where it's a diddle after the accent, and you just do that all in one hand, and you do the crossover, and so that it's all just one hand playing the entire time, and then you switch to the other hand playing the entire time. The next thing that I worked on was using the tool, the slow, fast, slow tool that is right here. And so that was starting slow, working up fast, and just working on different crossover types. And then the last thing that I worked on was applying this in context. So in this instance, I did it with a stock shopping spree, just so I could get all the different hybrid rudiments in there and just to kind of assess how is this going, what do I need to work on for next time. Whenever I go into these practice sessions, or these streams rather, I intentionally am thinking of like what I'm going to do beforehand. And sometimes you get a little like deviation where you're like, let's head in this new direction. But generally speaking, follow what I plan, because that's what I want to work on. How do you work on flam accents without actually working on flams? If you go into one of the 600 grid variations, it's for free on my website, diddle after an accent, if you play it on one hand, this can make it so that you can actually practice. Flam accents are this kind of motion. So this is the same thing as playing a diddle after an accent. But if you do it on one hand, then you're working on flam accents. If you double stop it, that makes it so you can hear whether or not you're playing with the same velocity, the same timing, etc. Because if you have this kind of a flam approach, then cool, you'll know that it doesn't sound good. That is inconsistent between both your hands. And if you don't have that nice pop, and instead you get that, then there's something to work on. Thank you for the sub on YouTube. I appreciate you. So when I'm doing these, I want to make sure that I'm not playing the around the drums or the circles and changing the rotation of my hips, or changing my shoulder rotation, or changing the angle of my hands. So I don't want to go like this and do like a Julie Spencer technique. We don't want to do that for this case. So I'm maintaining the exact same position that I'm doing when I'm doing it on one drum. All I'm doing is just like changing the hand so that it swings back and forth and gets extra blurry while I'm moving around on the different drums, etc. So that's something to focus on whenever you're playing, is your shoulders, your hips, and then making sure that you are not changing your wrist angles when moving around circles on the drums. Trying to, again, maintain continuous motion of the hand that's not playing. So that way when I get to these fast and hit just a bunch of rim, at least it's smooth rim. How can you sweep and cross arms without the stick hitting your hands or other sticks? Good question. So there's 2 different types of crossovers. One type of crossover is a stick over stick crossover. The other type of crossover is a wrist over wrist crossover. Now when you're doing a sweep, so you're going from, it's also called a scrape for some people. The thing that you want to focus on is the shortest distance from this particular head to the next drum that you're going to be playing on, and keeping it equidistant from the rim. So when you're playing on this, you can play anywhere as long as it's the same distance from the rim. So you don't want to play from here to the center of the head, but you can play from here to anywhere along the side. Now the reason why I'm telling you that is because when you're playing these diddles, sometimes you're going to take the shortest distance from right here, but other times you might need to move more towards the outside to get your hands out of the way so you don't have your sticks hitting on sticks. So you might need to move your hand a little bit further up or a little bit further back to get a different placement for the diddles or there, okay? Now, whether you're working on triplet diddle with 4 counts or 2 counts, or you're doing the inverted version of these, or even like the 16th note versions of these, you want to make sure that you have a nice, even height for your playing. That's the goal, at least. We don't want to make it so that the diddles are louder than the check, or vice versa, so that if you're looking at this across like a football field, you should just see somebody playing at the same height the entire time. If it was on mute, you wouldn't know if they were playing diddles. All you're seeing is just check pattern the whole time with the sticks. You know, that's how you play, with your arms like this. Trust me, I know, I'm a doctor. I'm trying to make sure that the diddles are still even, and so I don't have like one hand higher than another. Typically, it's gonna be the hand that's on top is gonna like dominate like this, and so you wanna either lower that one or raise the other one, or a combination of the two, so that way you get nice and even strokes instead of a mismatch between the different heights like that. So really focus on that with the crossovers when you're doing this. So when I'm doing this, I want to make sure I'm not like having different playing zones all over the place, like too narrow or too wide right here. So we want it to be the same spot as if I'm playing here. And I just happen to be crossing over, so we don't want to overshoot or undershoot our crossovers. You're going to get a different tone unless you happen to be hitting equidistant from the rim, so the same distance from the rim. Slow, fast, slow starts slow, gets faster, and then slows back down again. And if you go into the description of the video, you can select how fast you want it to go. So I'm gonna say, hey, I wanna start at 40, go up to 160, and go back down to 40. And it's gonna take me a little over 10 minutes to be able to do that. Again, it's only gonna go up 1 BPM at a time. Once you get to 160, it holds it for 16 counts or 4 measures, and then it slows all the way back down to 40. So you notice at the end of these practice streams that I chop out on something. It's partly just to have fun, but it's also so that I can get some data for what to work on. So pick something, play it faster than you should, and see what happens. If you notice your left hand tightens up on a diddle or something, cool, maybe you gotta slow down diddles. I was having tight accents on the left, so that's why I slowed this down to 40, and I'm spending the better part of the stream just working on that. So that grid variation is great for working on your inverts or your upstrokes, but there's 600 more grid variations, play-longs, as slow as 20 beats a minute or as fast as 200, and then there's 1,500 hours of free drumming content, play-longs and whatnot on my website, bunch of lessons, tips, etc. Check it out, link to the top of the screen if you're interested in